Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
everyone. This is funny because both of us have spoken in this group before, but we usually have Andrew with us. It's just us today.
It's just us, Julie. Hello.
Which is awesome. Hello to everybody that is viewing. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this Tuesday morning. I'm going to take a step back and let Dana introduce herself, and then I'll tell everybody who I am, and we will get started.
Awesome. Okay, there is an echo, Julie. Do you want to mute just to see if that works? All right. Hi everybody. Happy Valentine's Day, happy Love Day, happy V-Day, whatever you celebrate today. We're so excited to share some love with you on one of our favorite topics, which is speaking human, and specifically like communication that just make teams have better relationships and get work done in a way that's actually enjoyable and effective. And specifically today, we are talking to you about meeting or email and how to do that, how to speak human and develop a team to get work done in a virtual world. I am your co-facilitator, co-host today, Dana Klusny. I am the co-founder and owner of Enswell Beer, which is a small batch brewery in Collingwood, Ontario, Canada, which is small batch in terms of it's in the making. We're playing the long game to get it open, which many of you might be able to identify with. I also have another business as a facilitator and a business consultant, and I specifically support business partners as well as teams to get done work and actually enjoy it. We're all playing the long game, I believe. The stakes are really high. It's not just our professional life, our personal life, our family, our sanity. And so I'm here to support people to get that work done and to feel good about it overall, because we got to thrive in this life. That's me, Julie.
Awesome. Okay. I'll try to mute myself like when I'm not speaking so that we can cut down if there's an echo. I'm Julie Rhodes. I am the owner of Not Your Hobby Marketing Solutions. I'm a strategic business consultant. Well, jumping over my words here. Basically, I teach small to medium-sized craft beer and cider companies, even like seltzer and other things, how to work smarter, not harder, just to make things a little bit easier on you. So I help guide folks through strategic sales planning, digital marketing planning, and distribution management. That has also, over the years, interestingly enough, carried over into infrastructure, leadership, management consulting as well. And so I find this topic very, very interesting. Dana, also, if you recognize the Safe Bars Pact initiative, I have to thank Dana for being one of the huge driving forces behind organizing that initiative and helping keep our group cohesive and productive at the same time with yay, Dana.
And that's a good segue because when the Safe Bar, I really truly believe that the Safe Bars Pact initiative and the group behind it, we came together in a much better way because we applied the principles that we're going to talk to you about today. Because when I came in, there was a lot of communication overwhelm, a lot of emails and reply alls, and not the best use of time with virtual meetings versus emails. And part of what we did was apply what we're going to be talking to you about today to make the process of coming together so much more enjoyable and effective, a better use of people's time. And by using the practical tools that we have with all the communication technologies that exist, but like understanding when to apply each, which one's better in a certain moment or situation than another one. So we're going to try to simplify that for you because these tools are there to support you, but how you apply them matters.
Right. And just, I'm sure you've seen the QR code that's in your corner. Hopefully everybody has seen that. That's actually going to pop up on each slide, just so you don't think you have to like snap it right now. You're not going to lose it. We don't have that many slides, to be honest with you. when Dana and I started collaborating about this, we wanted it to be as interactive as possible, because there's no better way to like convey big ideas and like talk about productivity and efficiency and stuff like that unless we get like real stories from people. So feel free to, first of all, you can blow up the comment section on the Facebook group feed and also the YouTube feed. But we also know that you don't necessarily want your name on everything all the time. And we wanted people to feel like they had permission to speak or ask questions anonymously. So if you scan this QR code, it's a little handy tool called Slido. I'm actually going to be monitoring this on my mobile device as we go along through the discussion. So if you don't feel comfortable putting something up on social, whether it's a comment or a question, please feel free to scan that code, get into Slido. You can ask something anonymously, and we will address it as best as we can. So
Yeah.
You ready?
Ready, let's go.
Let's do this. Okay, if I can hit the button correctly. Goodness. Okay. All right, so this is what we thought might be some common occurrences that maybe lead to congested, I feel like that's a good word, congested communication, you know? And I'm sure everybody has seen jokes online, like with the coffee mug or the t-shirt that says like, that meeting should have been an email, or that email should have been a meeting. You know, jokes aside, you know, not to go cliche, but, you know, COVID conditions, it altered the way that we work together. That's the basics. We don't need to go, you know, too long into that, but it totally altered the way that like modern companies function. And we feel like anyone listening, like in this group, might really resonate with some of these common issues. I know I do, especially the email overload and the reply alls. That is one of my absolute top like pet peeves, is that when there's multiple people on an email and somebody hits the reply all, and then there's a back and forth and people are replying at different times, or somebody throws an attachment in there. And then depending on what browser I'm on, whether I'm on the Gmail, like browser interface, or my MacBook client, or on my phone, and maybe that's just my age, I don't know, but sometimes I can't follow the stream of like the stream of consciousness.
Black channel.
Like, yes, same thing. Like because, almost
WhatsApp
because
group.
Yeah, like it's too instantaneous, and it's not the right environment for that. Dana, do you want to riff on some of elaborate on some of these too?
Yeah, what happened is I think we realized, by not being able to be in shared spaces anymore, being in the brewery together, the production area together, the office together, that we realized how vital communication is, and how much we've kind of taken it for granted in terms of the ease of how it is when we're all socially and physically together in the same space. And then as also with juggling multiple different departments, like I mentioned, I mean, that's something that existed pre-COVID. I think that everybody's been working towards. If you have a group of people working in the production area, and then you have a group of people in an office upstairs, and then you have your tap room staff, you know, in one area of the building, and you have people working at different times of the day, like I mentioned, different locations, even within the same building. Then you look at all the expansion that's happened for breweries and beverage companies across North America, and you're looking at people being in different time zones. Juggling, you know, streamlined communication with all those factors at the same time becomes a real logistical nightmare. And then just those things aside, you know, when it comes to setting expectations about how we want people to communicate, some of the nuanced things, like how we want people to communicate, what information we want shared, what information is not to be shared on this platform or in this meeting. And with management really being able to set clear expectations, so the rest of everybody, again, that trickle down, the leadership effect, that it becomes streamlined for everyone, that's often really challenging. Julie touched on the email overload and replies all, so I'm not going to go to that. And then another thing that's happened is, there's been this big push to like break apart silos. We have so many silos. And so in some ways we overcomplicated it by saying, okay, well, to break the silos, we need to bring everybody together and we need to have all these meetings. And then we have all these meetings, whether they're in person or virtual. And it gets to the point where people end up resenting the meetings or not wanting to come to them. And people, like the last point on this slide, do people actually like working together? If people don't actually like coming together for those meetings, then those meetings become kind of redundant or unproductive, and they lack a purpose or an intention that's actually going to help get work done. So maybe you're experiencing some of these. If you have any other common issues that you face in your brewery with communication, please add them in the chat. These are the top ones that we come across and that we're going to be addressing today in terms of how to best use the tools available to you and a strategy for communication so that you can mitigate and sort of, get away from, move past some of these issues.
Yeah, I think something that Dana had added in our discussion notes before we decided to come on and put these slides together and everything, and I love it, is that just because you have a whole bunch of all hands meetings, or because you have a Slack thread, or because you have a Zoom schedule that has multiple touch points with all the departments, doesn't necessarily equate to productive or efficient. It equates to a lot of action
or good relationships.
So, I think quality over quantity. I don't know why I just now thought about that. In speaking about this, that's kind of where we want people to go with all of this. So
and being intentional. So we're going to support you to take the time to be intentional about how you communicate and when and with what tools and how often. So again, it's about the quality of the communication that you have to develop your teams, not all the different methods or all the different ways that you consistently do it.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to let you lead on this because this is your jam.
Yeah. So why this is important. So why is communication so vital? Because as I've mentioned before, a brewery, people go, oh, what is collaboration? We hear this word all the time. Well, your brewery is a collaborative project. Everything about it is collaboration. And that's really just different people coming together with different, they have different needs, they have different skill sets, and all of those things are coming together to co-create something that is amazing. Co-create a beer, co-create a hospitality experience, co-create, sales across North America of your beer and brand recognition. All of this is coming together. And at the core foundation of collaboration is effective communication, because that's how we are able to listen to one another and build on those ideas that co-create something special. So most importantly, why we want to bring intentionality and thoughtfulness to how we communicate is because that in turn creates better relationships to actually get the work done. And again, collaboration for the sake of collaboration, just because you have to do it, and you don't really want to, I tell everybody, If you don't enjoy collaborating and working with other people, that is totally okay. Know your strengths and focus maybe on another area of business that works, where you can work more independently. But in general, for collaboration to work, people need to be focused, relaxed, and having fun. They actually need to enjoy showing up to communicate with one another. Because when people are in that state, the ideas that are generated, they come through so seamlessly. They're often better ideas. And then because of that, we can drill down on the work that's required to fulfill those ideas and get it done quicker. And to be able to have these great meetings, whether they are in person or virtual, to actually spaces to bring people together, most importantly, they all need great leaders. Okay. That it doesn't mean it's the same leader every time, but somebody who is driving the purpose of that meeting, keeping people inspired with that purpose, and keeping the momentum going from that meeting to best use the time and the resources of the skills of the people who are showing up. You need somebody who's actually taking notes. It's got to be more than just talk. I can't tell you how many people, sit in a meeting, they, for an hour, they share all these great ideas. And at the end they go, that was a great meeting. And they're no closer to getting anything done. So we're not meeting for the sake of meeting. We're making sure that talk translates into written actions, because sometimes when it's written out and it's clear, we realize that maybe that's not actually what we intended to do or what we want to do. And we need people who want to be there, which is why it's really important to think thoughtfully about who needs to be at this meeting and who doesn't. Because people who want to be there, you've got that front of the class energy and people who are motivated to be there. Overall, it's going to be a more productive way of communicating and sharing ideas.
That's excellent. I think to touch on just a few things, and then we'll move forward again. But a lot of the times I catch myself, and people that know me know that I quote Brene Brown like consistently all the time. But from her book, Dare to Lead, she just has this really simple principle of what does done look like, right? So like in thinking about like collaborating, getting together, like to accomplish something, and knowing the type of collaboration, right? Are we collaborating to get something done? Are we collaborating just to build relationships, like team building? But knowing what, and I put this in the notes, and Dana was like, what does this mean? Like knowing what point B looks like, getting from A to B, like knowing what that end result is good to know with whatever you're doing, even if it's just writing an email. Like what am I trying to accomplish? So like, if it's not going to accomplish anything, maybe you don't do it. Maybe it's excessive, communication, if it's not going to be beneficial in some way. And then I also think, about, can the leader of the meeting, like take that on themselves and know how to get those, like facilitate to get people to that like end point of that, like we accomplish what we came here to do, whether that's an email or a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting. Note takers, yes, like next steps, right? What are the next steps? We had a great meeting. What are the next steps? And then people who want to be there, again, in your reference notes, you said it's okay to have silence.
Yes.
In meetings, like it's okay to be introverted and not like be like at a meeting. Like that is okay. And you don't need to fill the silence with like junkety junk. It's the quality of what is being shared and the connection points. And I think the comfort level, not to jump around too much, but it's one thing to just say, we have an open door policy and you can come see us whenever you want to. Usually the people that have issues that you should be addressing in an open door policy probably won't step up and do that. But you've got to cultivate like a company culture that reinforces like, it's okay to say, like, I don't like this. I don't feel comfortable doing this. This is not one of my strengths. This is one of my weaknesses. This is how I collaborate well. This is how I accomplish things. And as leaders, whether that's an owner, operator, manager, you know, department head, whatever it is, that's on you to cultivate that culture of, that really is, when people talk about inclusive company cultures, I think that's really what it is
Yeah.
I see you, I hear you, and how can we work better together?
And it just a good example of this when we talk about that cultivation or curating the group to come together is and keeping it inclusive is just as an example, a brewery that I worked for, we were moving to a new system called duo tanks. So basically serving tanks in the tap room. They're from cool, very big in Europe. And we were bringing them in. And so technically speaking, there was like a lot of different people who had to be a part of that. When we started thinking about how we were going to meet to get that done, we didn't think, okay, so just our sort of like our team, our draft maintenance team, those members can just be there because they're going to be doing the work. And then we'll have a separate meeting where we'll let all the staff know what we had done. We thought, okay, if we think of this as a project, who needs to be there in terms of who has an invested interest? And so obviously the two leads of the draft maintenance team, we decided would be part of all communications, whether that was in-person meetings or emails. We knew that there was a supervisor, that we had multiple supervisors in the retail store, so the tap room, but we knew that two of them were particularly excited by this project. And so we decided as a team that they would be part of that project team and they would be included in all the communications. And then our retail manager, as well as, and this was kind of the weird one, but we had somebody in the marketing team who was very interested in the storytelling around the history of this system and all of that. They were a part of it. All different skill sets, but we made sure that they were a small core team that would be at the center of all communications. And that way they would then act, and we set the expectations in advance. They would act as almost the beacons of communication of updates within their existing teams so that everybody was kept in the loop, but not everybody had to be brought in. We didn't have this huge team of people that were always weighing in, and it worked very well. And again, but we took the time, and I say we as the project leads and the managers in that case, we took the time to think about who would be best involved in this. And we took time to listen to other people about where their interests were and their excitement of wanting to actually participate and bringing them in.
Oh, that's a great example. And while I go to the next slide, I'll just say, for as much as Dana and I might use like big buzzwords today, like communication and collaboration and, company culture and things like that, I just want people to know it doesn't matter the size of your organization. This applies to everybody.
Yep.
And, Dana and I have both been in the CBP group for quite some time. And we see like people's problems and where they're coming from, whether it's startup, nano, small, medium, regional, whatever size brewery in planning, this is something that applies to everyone across the board. So we thought it would be good to give some examples of, benefits of different channels that you can use, kind of as like a guide, a rough guide. It's not comprehensive, but a rough guide. And we'll go through these next 3 slides pretty quickly because we do want to have more of a discussion about the dynamic of everything. But
when to use each.
When to use each. Right. Dana, do you want to start on the email?
Yeah. So really quickly, benefits of using email. I, as a startup brewery on a small budget, who's going through a lot of permitting, we have engineers, we have an architect, we have planners, and we're paying for all of them. So for every time we communicate, they're tracking down how much time they put into it. And then that's what they're going to bill you for. And so that matters. So benefits of an email for us in that situation is that when we don't need to have a discussion altogether, but we want all those, like I said, all those consultants to be on the same page about the next steps. So here we are in the permit application process. Here are the next steps based on what each person is going to be working on and how that, so everybody knows like what everybody's working on and who's dependent on what information to move forward. That's where email is great. You can do mass delivery of updates, of almost like a quick to-do list. You're informing your team on what everyone else is working on and timelines, but you're doing it quickly so that, you're not having to organize a meeting where everybody comes in person to share updates. It's just, an email, somebody's reading it, maybe they're glossing over it for a couple minutes, they're seeing their piece, and they can simply reply back to either everyone or just the project lead and say, I got it, and any questions. So everybody's on the same page. But it's based on, either simple questions to get a quick answer, as Julie put on the slide. If we start moving into the complexities of this particular aspect of, the drawing, for instance, the building permit drawing, it's not working and you're seeing it go back and forth. You got to stop the email. And that's when you move on from that. But quick information to make sure that everybody's informed and up to date, email, best friend.
Yeah. Especially if it's a yes or no or a number, I teach sales and distribution management. So my brain immediately goes to examples of like, how does this show up? When I'm doing work with my clients or work with sales teams, it would be like salespeople out there. If you were a sales rep and you emailed a beer buyer and said, would you like a keg of Julie's lager? Yes, 2, please. Like, that's great for an email. That's very, do you need to reach out to a buyer and copy a whole bunch of people on it and say, do you want a keg of this? And can we do an event on this day? And will you let me know when your menu is changing? And you have sort of different layers of going different directions. Probably not your best medium for an email. And I think complexity is something that's a key word right there. Is it complex? Do you have multiple people on there? Are you looking for feedback that might be complex? Now, I can think of a time, and this is a good example of a complex email, but the difference is, like if anybody out there is doing like a beer festival or like a conference, something like that, and the organizer is sending a very complex email with instructions about like registration, things to bring with you, you know what I mean? Things like that. But here's the deal. What you'll notice about those most of the time is that you can only see your name and there is nobody on the CC line, hopefully. And this is maybe a good rule of thumb for people. When you BCC somebody, blind copy, it means that you don't expect a response. Like informative, right? Like I'm serving you this information. I'm serving you instructions that is relevant to what we're doing together. But if you're not, and people misuse this quite a bit. And Dana, I don't know if you've seen that as well, but when you're on a copy line, like a CC line, that is for like action, like I want your input. I want you to chime in on this. And I think you're part of the conversation. I just think sometimes when I see a CC line with like 30 people in it, I'm like, oh no, this is going down fast. Like, yeah, it's gonna get bad, like real quickly. So maybe, best practice to take away from this is if you have a lot of folks that you're informing, try using a BCC for like non-action, you know, and use that as a way to kind of guide you moving forward. But I also think about it as like, you know, it's a one-way street. Like there's a one-way flow of communication. Like maybe there's a turnaround with an answer, but then it kind of ends there.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's predominantly one way. And once it turns into, you know, two-way, multiple lanes of traffic, like that's when you sort of got to stop and halt and go, okay, we might actually need to move to like a group call, whether that's virtual or get on the phone or bring everybody together for a virtual in-person meeting. Just really quickly on the hot tips. So in Julie's case, just so it's clear, if people haven't used the BCC in this way before, your two would be to yourself.
Yeah.
So you're emailing it to yourself and you're BCCing everyone else for just informing. And also a nice thing about that is if somebody hits reply, it only comes to you. It's not inundating everybody else. Whereas if you put everybody in the CC and somebody can easily hit reply all, then everyone is getting that. So think really intentionally about how you use that. And then another hot tip is your subject line is your best friend. I can't tell you how many times I've spent more time thinking about an effective subject line than the actual email itself, because my tip is before I like the main part of the email or the subject line that people see first, I put in caps and I would put like in all capital letters, and I will say like for review, action required, just something that gives people an idea right away what I'm expecting, and then put beside it like colon whatever it is, like, you know, strategic, like, you know, beer release, like, or our beer release campaign or something like that. Or so just think carefully too about not just how you use the 2CC and the BCC, but also your subject line. Those can really, really help with emails.
Yeah. For anybody who does chain sales that is like, why are they so particular about spreadsheet names and subject lines when it says like Julie's Brewing Company, fall reset, submission, new item form, fall 2023? That is very findable for that person that is juggling thousands of emails, because it's very specific. So it's kind of like naming a photo that you want to find later, instead of just having like image 931B-12. You want to have photo of Dana and Julie at CBC 2023 or whatever, you know, whatever it is, so that you can easily locate it.
So somebody can run a search and sort of see like, you know, like, again, just on the beer release theme, like whatever the name of your new IPA, make sure that that's in the subject line, because if anybody's ever wanting to go back and track and be like, oh my gosh, what was it? Like they can type it in the search and then everything can come back up.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about, again, I'm going to let you run wild with this, benefits of in-person meetings.
Yeah. Okay. So quick example. So going back to this, you know, we've got this team of consultants. We're on a you know, small budget trying to do this independent small batch brewery. We need to best use our time. So like I said, email for updates. Now, we're also working with the town, our local town, and the planning department and the engineering and the water department. And we had a scenario where our engineers and the engineers at the water department were going back and forth on calculations. Like we have to meet a certain number for water calculations to be able to move forward. Our engineers are saying one thing, the town's engineers are saying another thing, and they're going back and forth, back and forth. Okay, email has got to stop. In this case, what we did was we simply said, okay, we would like to organize a virtual, this was in this case, it was in person, but in person virtually. we'd like to organize just a meeting. We want to go over the water calculations, make sure everybody's understanding one another about the methodology that's being applied and all the nuances of it to move forward with the solution. In 5 minutes of meeting in person, it was solved. And not only solved, but then it became clear that one particular engineer was the lead, and they were the person that needed, they had like the information. They were that like the gatekeeper from the town. So all of a sudden now our engineers are like, okay, we need to make sure that this person is in the loop always. Another example similarly is, and this was the difference between understanding a virtual meeting like what I just told you and an in-person. Our architect was at a point with the drawings with somebody else who was consulting with the town where there was so much back and forth. What needed to happen was actually getting everybody in the same room with the printed drawings in front of them so that visual thinkers could look at things, talk it out, and figure it out with the foundation of that drawing in front of them and go over all the nuances and come to the solution. In that case, in 15 minutes, everything was resolved. And even more so, the relationships between the two were strengthened so that we had almost the buy-in, so that if we had a quick question, the person who was consulting for the town was willing to pick up the phone and just answer it, rather than going through the bureaucratic process of like tracking and timing and no, you have to wait. So there are benefits to both. And it's just, again, knowing when we need to exchange ideas, when we need input, when we need to finesse like the creativity behind an idea, we need to build a better relationship. Again, bring people together so that working together feels a little bit more enjoyable, and we can delegate work a lot quicker. This is when an in-person or a virtual meeting where you see people or you see what you're working on is so important.
Definitely. And I think about, in my context, like my line of work, this makes me think of why, from the supplier side, like from the producer side, if you're selling beer or cider or whatever it is, in the wholesale channel, and you do like a product training with one of your accounts so that they can better integrate that, like immerse themselves in your brand because you want them to have that connection. Mm-hmm. That's not so strong virtually, and it definitely can't be conveyed in an email. There's something very dynamic about like sensory and tactile, and there's a back and forth, so it can be highly engaged, and there's feedback, there's tasting, there's smelling, there's things like that is a great thing to do in person.
There's tone of voice, like let's not forget that
tone of
body
voice,
language.
Yes.
Most people don't realize that that with communication, it's like over 70% of communication that people take in has nothing to do with the words. So if you're spending all this time thinking really eloquently about the words of an email, but then you have no control once it gets to somebody's inbox, and what they're reading is not so much the words, but more than 70% are coming at it from tone, and again, out of your control how people subjectively interpret the tone of an email. So when you bring people together, it becomes a lot clearer the intention behind somebody's words with tone, with body language. And that is how you have more effective communication, where everybody actually gets on the same page.
Yeah. I actually, not to go off on a tangent, but I actually learned something new about body language the other day, and I wanted to share it because I think it's interesting. And I've always been taught the adage that if somebody crosses their arms, that is closing off, right? That's creating a barrier between me and you, right? That I'm like, I'm not open to what you are sending to me. communication wise. And so I get worried sometimes when I'm speaking with somebody and they have their arms crossed. The counterpoint that I just learned about the other day is that some people do that to self-soothe.
Yes.
To make them feel more comfortable. That, when you're like lounging at home, having a cup of coffee or watching a good show, or enjoying, like a sport or something like that, you might do this because you're comfortable. It just makes you comfy. So anyways,
I love that. Or if you're me, you're freezing. How many people are like, honestly, you're cold. I'm cold. I'm giving myself like a mini hug,
a little hug,
my body warmth. So some of these, but this is really important because some of these social cues, we get better at understanding through practice. And so if you're not already integrating the practice of being in a space in person with someone, so you're only virtual and you're missing that, please consider building more of a practice within your brewery or organization of hosting in-person meetings once in a while, so that everybody can learn from each other's social cues and have a much better idea of what's actually going on versus the stories they have in their head of what they think is happening and going on.
Yep. The good old ladder of inference in people's heads. Okay, so let's talk about some benefits of actually working virtually. There are benefits to this. We know Zoom burnout is real, but there are benefits to collaborating virtually.
Yeah. Big shout out to Tom Halaska, who's been in CBP before, and Tom and I have presented together. But we were actually just chatting about this and how he applied a really great way of applying this hybrid approach. So basically, there was he works for Ritual Spirits, non-alcoholic brand, and they were doing a launch in LA, but they're based in Chicago. So they have a team in LA. They do this. They have a whole week of events. Well, what he did was he put together a PowerPoint presentation of the summary of that week and some of the results, the outcomes of the launch in LA. But instead of sending just simply an email with that as an attachment, or waiting to bring everybody in a room in Chicago together to do the presentation, what he did was he used Loom, which is a free tool, and he was able to create a 3-minute video. So a really quick pitch going through the slides, but like 3 minutes, high level of just like, this was sort of like what you need to know about the launch and what you kind of need to know high level about this presentation in terms of the summary of it. Great thing about Loom too, and using something like that, is somebody can change the speed to like 1.5 so that the speaker talking it's a lot faster. So if you're a slow talker, even you as the presenter can change the speed afterwards so that it's a lot quicker. And then he sent that to people with the attachment of the presentation. So that way people in different time zones in different parts of the country could get the information. They watch the 3-minute pitch. They can easily see it on their phone versus their computer because it's compatible with both. We need to think about that. And then it was an invitation for people to go through the slides, the presentation on their own time to the areas that they were most interested in. And then that became anything that had to do with the questions and going through it. They almost got the prep. So when they came for their all hands meeting, in this case, whether it was in person or virtual, everybody was already prepared. And I just loved that example because it used numerous ways of communicating, but very intentionally to make sure that people got the information they need. They weren't overwhelmed, and time was being used so wisely. And like, our slide says, it's a launch runway for more. It's the launch or the stepping off point to an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting that's already grounded within a purpose and with people already having an idea of what they need to know, the foundation of what that meeting is going to be about.
Yeah, definitely. And I've done a little bit of that before where like I have a production team that gets together like a rough calendar of what they want to do for the year. And they're able to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, and then it gets handed off to the sales team. And then we're able to come together later on virtually to talk about feedback from the retail market, like, will this work? Will this not work? You know what I mean? So it saves a little bit of time of just, presenting all of that like blah, and then it doesn't give the sales team time to think about it and come up with productive feedback. So then you can either meet virtually, or honestly, I'd rather do those in person. But the prep work is definitely virtual. And I think this also applies to anybody that is aligned with a wholesaler. I'm old school. I was doing supplier sales a long time ago before anybody was using Zoom. And every time we had an annual brand planning meeting, which is like end of year, you meet with your wholesalers, you come up with a plan together for what the next year looks like together. And usually you share goals. It used to be in person every single time. And it was owners traveling, sales reps traveling, coordinating schedules, booking a meeting room, all those things, right? And the thing is, what we learned during COVID, you don't really need that. You don't. You can do all that in a virtual meeting. The hybrid approach is, we're going to send out an agenda. This is what we're going to cover. Here's my presentation beforehand. The visuals that you use in an ABP meeting are very easy to see on screen. They're not complicated, like blueprints or whatever. And you know what? It saves everybody time. And you don't need that, in pomp and circumstance and people traveling halfway across the US. Now, if there's other things to be done, like you have to sample a new product or show them a physical point of sale material that you're testing out, like something that would change the dynamic, right? So like there's more feedback needed. There's more an exchange of ideas. Yes, go in person. But for the past couple of years with my client partners, we've been doing ABP meetings 100% on Zoom because they're very efficient and everybody has the information that they need. And then we move into execution mode. And it's lovely. Honestly, it doesn't bother me at all not doing them in person anymore. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And it is a launch run, right, for other intentional meetings, because we can follow it up with, brand manager meetings, chain manager meetings, like marketing teams, so on and so forth. But that initial groundwork there is done.
All right. I love this graphic that Julie put together. And if you're listening on Spotify, because you're walking right now and taking this in or driving, check, maybe just come back to this exact moment, which would be 50 minutes into our presentation, just to look at the 50-minute mark. Just come and look at this, this visual, because what we have here is we have the intersection of two circles. So we've got send an email is one circle. We've got meet in person is another circle, and we have them overlapping for the hybrid virtual approach. And to us, it's a good way of symbolizing that all the different forms of communication are distinct, and yet they do integrate to work together in different ways. And it's not like pick one and just, commit to that. It's being flexible in your communication. That's the most important thing. And flexibility is not just for the purpose of what you're trying to communicate, but also how the different people that are going to be engaged, what are their preferences for how they like to be communicated with. And if there's one thing I would like you to take away from today, it's before you even start down the path of especially when you're thinking about developing your teams and team communication, before you actually, do an in-person meeting or anything like that, ask the question of the team. And this could be like a little survey or whatever, or just an in-person thing. Ask how people like to be communicated. Do you prefer virtual meetings? Do you prefer messaging channels like Slack or WhatsApp? If you have Microsoft Office, Teams, that was one, like a Teams chat. Do you like being in person? Ask these things. Ask people if they like email versus messaging. Ask these things to get a better sense of what are the patterns and trends with this particular team that you're looking at. Because if people enjoy and feel like you're meeting where they're at for communicating, they're way more likely to engage and show up, and to keep the communication going so that it can evolve within that team. So just because you love in-person meetings doesn't mean that that's the way to go all the time, especially if you have people that's not something that they can really commit to. So always ask and figure out the preferences, the communication preferences of your team first, and go from there.
That is so incredibly important. I actually use that in the, I'm a mentor in the BA Mentorship Program. I can't say enough wonderful things about that program. But what that does is put me in a position where I have to communicate with a large number of people on different platforms. And one of the first things we get out in the open when I start working with a mentee is, how do you want to do your learning session together? What makes sense for you? And I'm on Zoom all the time. That I live here. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't at all. It allows me to work with clients all over the globe, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But if it's somebody local, we actually choose to meet in person because there's that dynamic, it's like this fun, just tumultuous flow of ideas and back and forth, and actively asking questions and actively listening to each other. And some people like to meet with me on Zoom, and they like recordings. They like to go back and watch things, for reference again. And honestly, I've worked with some people that have just said, I am totally burned out on Zoom. Can we just talk on the phone?
Yeah. Love the phone. Let's not, let's
bring
not
back the phone.
About the phone, right? Pick up the phone and call someone. It doesn't always need to be a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting. We don't always need to see each other face to face. A good example of that is if you need to work through a conflict with someone. So there's a dynamic that's not working, or there's a communication issue, and you just need to have that honest conversation. I can tell you right now that face-to-face communication for those situations do not work for everyone, and it actually enhances the level of tension. So
and stress,
right? Ooh. So in that case, there are ways, especially if you're working remotely, set the intention, say, hey, you know what? I want to talk to you about what happened Friday in the tap room. I'm going to give you a call. Let's each go for a walk while we're having the call. I'm going to go for a walk. And this could be not just for conflict. I love this anyways. So you have a phone call, you put your headphones on, and you each go for a walk in whatever your places are. When people are able to do something, so they're moving their body while taking in information, and they're not directly face to face with someone, it creates this sense of safety and space that is really, really important. So, that is always an option, to pick up the phone and not just sit picking up the phone. But I have another friend who has to pace when they're on the phone, and that doesn't work well in a meeting, an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting. So understand those things, and that's available to you, and you can use those wisely as well.
And I also use the phone. I assist people with onboarding. So, hiring, interviews, things like that. And people are shocked when I say, let's talk on the phone for a bit first, and then we'll move on to other stuff if it's a good fit. And it's a really efficient way to, talk to a job prospect, or an applicant. And I find that it also removes that barrier of, do they have Zoom? Do they have a computer? Do they have really available? You know what I mean? Like, most people have a phone or have access to a phone somewhere. And also, I'm not setting up bias beforehand. I have no idea what they look like. I have no idea what their pronouns or preferred gender or, whatever that is. Right. So it feels like a very level playing field. And you can get a lot done on the phone. And that comes also full circle back to tone, which a lot of the times we use these digital communications that are very flat, like email or Slack or something like that. And intentions can be very skewed very quickly, because you don't get somebody's tone or inflection or cadence or body language or something like that. So a lot of the times I find communication can get very messy, because you don't really fully understand that person's perspective or their intention.
And in that thing too, with most messaging channels now, Voxer is one. I mean, WhatsApp is great. They all have the voice like the voice note capability. And so if you have somebody in your team that is a verbal processor and would prefer to do a voice note, invite that, encourage that. The one disclaimer that I will say is, ask them, especially if there's a lot of people on the chat, ask them to do a message first before the voice note that's like 3 minutes long, to just say, here's a quick update from me. I've thought about this problem that we're looking to solve, and I have a few ideas. Listen to the voice note for more. That way, if somebody's in the chat and at this point, maybe they're not involved in that particular problem solving for that problem, they can choose to not listen to the 3 minute or 5 minute long voice note. So a little, like just a little quick chat with like an arrow or something is really important for people who love to do the voice note.
That's great. You and I do that together and I love it. It's like I get a preview and then an elaboration, and I'm like, that makes so much sense. I did that with this
presentation. We're going back. Julie sent this presentation in an email. I opened it up, reviewed it, but I only had some quick notes. And instead of emailing, we have a messaging, we have text between us. I sent her a quick text, just saying, thank you. This is awesome. I have a few questions. Some of them I need to just verbally process in terms of giving you the context of what I'm sort of not understanding and questions I have. So here's the voice note for that. And then it was the voice note for that. And then Julie is able to listen. She puts in her comment and boom. And that, it took, what is that, Julie? That back-to-back of finalizing this presentation took us maybe in total 2 minutes.
Right. And it allows me the space to, because Dana and I are in different time zones, I can go at my own pace in my own time zone. We're engaged in back and forth communication, productive communication, but we're being efficient and we're also observing each other's boundaries.
And most importantly, I forgot to tell you the prep work, because this actually is kind of cool. We're bringing it all together full circle from this experience of this presentation. But did we go back and forth emailing or back and forth text and voice noting with one another to build this presentation? Absolutely not. We scheduled a 1 hour meeting. We set the intention. This 1 hour is going to be specifically for us to brainstorm and finalize what get down what we want the presentation to be. In that hour, we got what we needed. We delegated. Julie is like, okay, I'm going to make the updates and I'm going to send it to you. And I was like, all right, I'm busy until this date, but then I am going to give you the notes and we'll finalize it before Tuesday. So we used an in-person virtual meeting. We used our text and voice notes, and we used email, but we used them very effectively based on what was needed and when.
And email was basically used just for scheduling, honestly, just for scheduling information, and that's about it. But it was very efficient. It felt very seamless. Both of us felt heard and seen, and here we are. I think it's pretty damn good.
So I'm not sure if there are people here live or not, and that's okay. But if anybody's listening to this on Spotify after the fact, and you have some questions, or that you want somebody to like even just talk through a particular communication challenge, Julie and I would love to hear from you, and we'd love to collaborate with you. So my contact at danaklusny.com, in the contact, I actually offer free collaboration. They're free 30-minute collaboration calls. And if you have a particular communication challenge, or you have something that's come through after listening or watching this presentation, and you want somebody to chat with about that, please follow up with me there. So on that contact page. And if you're looking to integrate better communication practices that are customized, not just with your team, but if you're in partnership. So if you're like me and you're running your brewery with also your your partner in life and love, and you know that you need to work on the communication between you because it's feeling kind of stressful, and you want a third person, I always say, like, are you ready for your first business threesome? I would love to be that.
So accurate, though. That covers so many people in this audience. I cannot even tell you.
So yeah, if you're in a twosome with somebody that you care about, and you're trying to consult and make the business better, and communication might just be one of those components, I offer Better Business Partners business consulting specifically for you, so I can be your third.
Ooh, so good. So good. And this is me. If you want to get a hold of me, if you're, on the struggle bus with any of your, selling techniques or planning, digital marketing. I say digital because I'm not a merch gal. Like, I don't really do the physical stuff. I do all the digital things online, or distribution management, team management, leadership, things like that. I would be tickled to hear from you. So feel free to, send us an email, and then that can lead to other things like virtual or in-person communication. So this has been lovely. Dana, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
I always feel like a better person after I get to do stuff with you.
Yeah, me too. This is so fun. So yes, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I think so. And Andrew is afar, but I think he's going to end the broadcast for us. And this will live forever in the CBP Facebook group, in the video section, and also on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel as well, totally free all the time. Thank you to the industry partners for that. And feel free to reach out to us anytime. But thank you for spending some time with us today. Bye, everyone.